I want to play for you a clip of Donald Trump interacting with a veteran who directly asks him about veterans' healthcare and what he's going to do. And without any context, it's kind of disturbing to see him ramble and really struggle to answer the question. You'd think that his respect, as he proclaims it, for veterans would grant them more of a thoughtful response. But then what we now know, jumping forward to what we now know about what he's actively doing to the VA, makes this all the more disturbing. Before playing it, I want to welcome Brittany. So good to be back with you.
I'm so happy to be back, Luke.
Brittany Page. Go subscribe, Brittany Page on YouTube. The Page Perspective, our now regular collabs.
I'm so happy.
Are amazing.
It's amazing.
So let's start with this. This is from the campaign. And during the campaign, he was getting asked about, now again, a very disturbing phenomenon in how he's governing.
Hi, nice to have you here. Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Sarah. I'm a veteran, U.S. Marine veteran, and
Great.
And I'm a Purple Heart recipient.
Wait. They didn't hear this part. This is very important. Please say it again, Sarah.
I'm a U.S. Marine veteran and a Purple Heart recipient of Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. Many veterans face significant challenges such as accessing quality health care, mental health support, and transition assistance back into civilian life. Will you commit to making the VA Choice program that you open up permanent?
So we had VA Choice, and this
So it should be noted that that was originally signed by Obama, but he took credit for it over and over again. But okay.
was something that was so important, was sought. That's where you have a choice of getting a doctor if you can't get fairly, quick service. And I will say we have great doctors. The doctors are incredible, but the administration of it is not good. And as you know, 4 years ago, we had the highest rated VA ever. We were at 92% approval rating. And I got two things done. I got VA Choice, and that was basically you wait, and if you don't have a doctor within 48 hours, you can go outside, get a doctor, we pay the bill, and you get yourself taken care of. People were waiting for 4 and 5 months to see a doctor, and they were not feeling well, but literally it was a minor thing, and they end up being terminally ill because of it. Think of it, terminally ill. The other thing we did, we had a lot of people that because of civil service and unions and other things, you couldn't fire them under any circumstances, no matter what they were. And they were sadists and they were thieves. There were a lot of bad people, right? You couldn't fire anybody. So they were living with people that were horrible. And these were both authorized by Congress. One was 52 years, they couldn't get it. The other was 58 years. I got the right to fire bad people that didn't take care of our veterans.
And I know this is dragging on. I just think that we need to hear the full extent of the answer because it gets worse. And the question was, what are you going to do?
I'm going to start meditating because
Okay.
I'm getting a little...
We'll get the full, and then we're going to give you the important stuff, so stick for that.
Right? You know that. And we fired 9,000 people and replaced them with great people, with loving people. And those two things, and we got rid of the sadists. 92% approval rating, and it's never been even close to that. Now, here's the bad news.
Oh.
They're very rapidly breaking the system up. They've hired a lot of the people back that were terrible and that we fired.
The sadists.
One of the problems, it's just unbelievable. And they don't know, you know why? Because they don't know what the hell they're doing. And the other thing is they're slowly getting rid of choice so that they're making it so tough that you almost can't use it. We were actually saving one interest because you save, a doctor would fix them up and get them back and beautiful. Instead, they were getting sicker, and sicker, and many of them became terminal. You know, I did one other thing. I have to say, right to try. That's where you have a right to try medicines that won't be approved for another 4 or 5 years. They've been trying for 50 years, more than that, to get it approved. And, the insurance companies didn't want it. The country didn't want it. Nobody wanted it. The doctors didn't want it because they didn't want to be sued. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I sat down in a room with all of them.
Actually, I can't take it. Let's skip, and see how this ends.
Nothing. No answer.
But if people are willing to sign that, we have saved so many thousands of lives. So I think you understand. But we're going to go back to choice very rapidly. Immediately, we're going back to choice. And we're also going to get rid of the bad.
Again, he just heard buzzwords. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's taking credit for something that it wasn't him. It's all very confusing. And then watch after this, it's just, all right, get off the stage.
People that don't love you, okay?
Again,
that's it.
The question was, will you commit to making the VA choice program permanent? And it was asked in the context of, what are you going to do to ensure that veterans can access health care, that they can access mental health care treatment, because they struggle to access these things sometimes. Nowhere in there was there an answer. And if you look at the crowd, I mean, it's just like what's happening today, right? They're like clapping when he's saying the things that he's saying about how great of a job he did and how he's firing everyone. But nowhere in here is he like, I'm very passionate about veteran healthcare. I'm so glad that you asked this question. And of course, we know now he's like taking all of these actions to make it more difficult for veterans, like the person who asked this question, to obtain that healthcare.
Yeah, so that's the subject of, to talk about now, which is, okay, he's going to mischaracterize his first term. He's going to do the, what I can promise you about the future is that I was so great before, which is always a strange answer to every question. Or what are you going to do to help my life? And he'll say, the economy was so great. It's like, well, the one you inherited. And so there, and how many veterans has he looked in the eyes and said, I'm going to protect you? Just there. He had some talking points, and he was looking in this person's eye and saying, I'm going to fight for you. So what's the reality for veterans like that one?
Well, the reality is there's report after report after report that Donald Trump is not helping veterans access healthcare, not helping veterans access mental health treatment. The latest report came from NPR, where they reported this article. Trump's policies are destabilizing mental health care for veterans, sources say, and they actually talk to people who are afraid to speak on the record, rightfully so, because they fear retaliation. And the report says, in the wake of federal firings and executive orders, providers and patients at the Department of Veteran Affairs say mental health and mental health care are suffering. They fear this struggle will get worse as the VA carries through with 80,000 promised job cuts. 80,000. The agency is one of the largest providers of mental health care in the country. Quote, I've been really struggling with my concentration and my ability to focus when I'm at work because I feel like I have this axe over my head all the time, says a mental health provider who asked not to disclose the location of her work and to identify only as Lynn, her middle name, for fear she could be fired for speaking out. So this is not a good situation for people who are working, who feel like they could be fired at any time, knowing that there's already been cuts that are causing there to be interruptions with treatment, causing for people to fear that there's going to be interruptions for treatment. None of this is healthy or productive for veterans.
Let me just read off to further portray that a few headlines if you just quickly search for this. She helped veterans in crisis, NBC News reports. Doge cuts eliminated her job. PBS, veterans becoming face of Trump's government cuts and Democrats' resistance. Time magazine, for veterans fired by Trump, the sense of betrayal runs deep. Trump administration plans to cut 80,000 employees from VA. VA dismisses more than 1,000. Oh, that was from earlier when they first started it. And unlike how he portrayed it in that clip, they're not being replaced with better people. And they're not being replaced at all. And the whole goal here is, they say it explicitly in their memos, we have to push out like 4 people for every one that we hire. And when you look at an agency like the VA, that if anything should have more investment and more support and more staffing to give veterans the support that they need and deserve. And instead they're running in the opposite direction, which, just like we talked about last time we collabed with Social Security, means that the accessing of and the treatment that people are getting, and you're hearing people tell their own personal stories in some of these reports, some, like you said, that are scared to go on the record, and then some that are willing to, about the job they were doing. And they know that they specifically, in, for example, hotlines or helping people in crises, they know that just them, not to mention the tens of thousands of other people in similar jobs, them being absent is going to mean real consequence, potentially existential consequence in the lives of people who have served our country. I feel like it underlines a reoccurring theme in politics, which is Republicans really love to campaign on things and to win over populations. You see that with the military. We're the ones who love the military, and then they're the ones undermining. Or we can't do anything about guns because the real problem with mass shootings is mental health treatment. But then every time funding is proposed to invest in more mental health treatment, they oppose it. Or the police. We love the police unless they're beat on behalf of Trump, then we'll pardon them.
Yeah, and that's a great point, especially on the guns and mental health thing, because along the same line, there was reporting that came from Popular Information, Judd Legum's outfit, and he talked about how VA therapists are being forced to provide mental health counseling in like open cubicles. And part of this is the Trump administration doing the return to office thing, right? They're demanding that people return to the office, but then they're not giving them private offices to do their work. They're being forced to conduct therapy in like a cubicle setting. And imagine this. Imagine you're watching this, you've been to therapy, you are, sitting down with your therapist on a telehealth appointment, and you see your therapist in a cubicle and like people are walking by and interacting. You don't feel comfortable talking about the things you're supposed to talk about in therapy, your fears, feelings that you're having that are very sensitive, any sensitive information. You don't want to talk about anything. I get uncomfortable when I'm at the bank or something and the teller's talking too loud. Imagine being a therapist. And in this article, he says, quote, in an internal chat among clinical resource hub staff, one therapist reported they were relocated to a VA call center cubicle space. According to the therapist, quote, non-mental health VA staff around my cubicle can hear my sessions. The therapist said they were worried about issues of licensure and ethics code violations related to confidentiality. Another therapist reported that they are being told by leadership that screen protectors, a white noise machine, and a headset is sufficient to ensure patient privacy in a large bullpen of cubicles. The therapist was skeptical and reported that these items are not always available. I'll tell you right now, as a licensed therapist myself, this is unacceptable. It's not ethical, and it's also not legal. So...
And then to see the priority problem here, I don't want to too much crossover into what we're talking about in different segments today, but we don't have enough money to properly staff the VA. We don't have enough money to properly fund Medicaid. We don't have money, but then we do have enough money for huge to the tune of trillions of dollars tax cuts
Constantly.
For those who already have so much. My hope is, we've been getting a flood of emails from workers, federal, workers who talk about their experience, and so many of them, I don't think I even knew what percentage of the federal workforce, it's a huge percentage, are themselves veterans. One of the reasons cited in some of these emails to people writing in is that they saw going into public service, working at the VA or other organization within the government. One guy was from the DOD as an extension of their service in the military, right? It's they didn't want to go from that, where it was all about serving the country, to just something else in the private sector that was unrelated to any sort of societal act. And so then you have these people, and there's this giddiness, again, this crossover to a different thing we're talking about later, among the Trump administration to make their lives a living hell, to push them out and to fire them with no warning. And not just on a human level for those people, it's all the people, but then veterans being a part of them, is tragic. But then even more consequential is now that they're not going to be able to do their job. Some of them who have done it for decades and done it well, their clients and the people they're supposed to be supporting are now going to see their lives hindered.
Absolutely. And 25% of the VA staff are veterans, I think, something like that. And there's been 2,500 VA employees that have already been terminated. So this does have ripple effects. I mean, it's not just that the treatment for veterans is being impacted, but then you have the employment for veterans that are employed by the VA being affected. You have the ripple effects of whether or not people can purchase medical supplies, if they can make appointments, if they can have transportation to their appointments. Like, there's so many aspects of this, the areas where people have lost their jobs, that are going to create holes in the types of care that veterans can obtain. And again, they claim to care about this. Everyone's cheering for it. And we're seeing the impact of it. So I don't think it's often that you get to see what a politician said on the campaign trail, and then just a few months later, what they're actively doing in their administration. So I do think it's useful to look at this video from him on the campaign, and then just a few months later, see what he's doing when he actually has power.
And then my big hope, because we can't control the fact that now he's able to do these things, that people like that one, crowd members, unlikely probably, but then just people out there who maybe themselves got swept up in the idea that Trump was going to be good for affordability, whatever, will connect the dots and not just feel the things in their lives, which I hate that that's something that now they're feeling, but know who's to blame and how we could see change. Brittany, remind people where they can support your work.
You You can support me right here on YouTube. Just search my name, Brittany Page. I host the Page Perspective, and I would love to see you there.